Story number one.
The Vanishing Man. Everyone in Maplewood knew about the old man on Sycamore Street. He wasn't exactly famous, but he was the kind of person everyone noticed, even if they didn't know his name. He could always be seen sitting on his porch, wrapped in a faded brown coat, staring at people as they walked by. His house was old, the paint peeling, the windows smudged with dirt. People avoided him. Not because he was mean, he never spoke to anyone, but there was something unsettling about the way he watched. Then, one day, he was gone. At first, no one cared. Maybe he had moved. Maybe he had died. No one had ever seen him leave his porch. But suddenly, the chair was empty. A few kids dared each other to go up to his door and knock, but no one had the courage. Days turned into weeks, and soon he was just another story people half remembered, until the posters went up. Missing Persons Report, Daniel M. Graves. The flyer had an old black and white photo of the man, younger but unmistakable. The real shock wasn't the missing poster itself. It was the date. Missing since October 19th, 1953. People thought it was a joke at first, but then the local newspaper picked it up. Daniel Graves had been declared missing almost 70 years ago. His family had searched for him. Police reports had been filed, and eventually he was presumed dead. But everyone in town had seen him just weeks ago, sitting on that porch. The town historian dug up an old photo taken in the early 1950s. It was a picture of Sycamore Street, and there, in the background, was Daniel Graves, sitting on the same porch, in the same coat. Except the house behind him had looked new then, not the run-down husk it was now. That's when the stories started. Some claimed he had been a ghost all along. Others said he was caught in a time loop, cursed to sit on that porch forever. And then, late one night, someone knocked on the historian's door. It was a young woman, her face pale, her hands shaking. "I saw him," she whispered. The historian let her in, offering her a seat. "Who?" "Daniel Graves. I was walking home past Sycamore Street, and he was there." "That's not possible," the historian said. "No one's been in that house for weeks." "I know what I saw," the woman insisted. "He was sitting in the chair, but something was wrong." She hesitated before continuing. "He was staring at me, not just watching, staring, like he knew me. And his mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out." The historian felt a chill creep up his spine. "What did he say?" "I don't know. I ran. But when I looked back, he wasn't there anymore." The historian decided to see for himself. That night, he walked to Sycamore Street, heart pounding with every step. The house was dark, lifeless, but the chair was there, empty. He turned to leave, then stopped. The streetlight flickered, and in its brief, stuttering glow, he saw movement, a shadow in the window. The next morning, the historian went to the town records office and requested any old documents related to the house. He found something chilling. The house had originally belonged to the Graves family. When Daniel went missing, the house was abandoned. No one had officially lived there since. So if Daniel Graves had vanished in 1953, who or what had been sitting on that porch all these years? People started watching the house more closely. Some swore they saw movement inside. Others heard strange whispers at night. Then one day, a new owner arrived, a couple from out of town, unaware of the stories. They moved in on a Saturday. By Monday, the house was empty again. They left everything behind: furniture, clothes, even their car. The doors were unlocked, the lights still on, but they were gone, vanished, just like Daniel Graves.
Story number 2.
The room that doesn't exist. Ethan had lived in his apartment for almost a year when he discovered the room. It was a small one-bedroom unit in an old building downtown. The kind of place with thin walls, creaky floors, and an eerie stillness at night. But the rent was cheap, and aside from the occasional odd sound, it suited him fine. Until one night, when he came home late and saw something strange. His apartment door was slightly open. Ethan's stomach twisted. He was sure he had locked it before leaving. Stepping inside, he held his breath, listening. Silence. Nothing looked out of place. His keys were still on the counter, his jacket draped over the chair where he'd left it. Everything was exactly the same, except for one thing. There was an extra door in the hallway, a door that had never been there before. Ethan stood frozen. His apartment was small. He knew every inch of it. There had never been a door in that hallway. And yet, there it was. A plain wooden door with a tarnished brass handle. It looked old, older than the rest of the apartment. Slowly, he reached out and turned the knob. It was locked. Ethan spent the next hour trying to figure it out. He measured the walls, checked for hidden panels, even searched online for blueprints of the building. Nothing. The door shouldn't exist. By morning, he convinced himself it had been a dream. When he got up to check, his breath caught. The door was gone. The hallway was back to normal, smooth and uninterrupted, as if nothing had ever been there. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan tried to forget about it, until one night he woke to a soft creaking sound. He turned his head. The door was back, and this time it was open. A deep black void stretched beyond the doorway. No walls, no floor, just an abyss swallowing the light. Then he saw it, a figure standing just beyond the threshold, tall, unmoving, watching. Ethan scrambled backward, his breath ragged. The figure didn't move, and then, in the silence, it whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." The door slammed shut. The next morning, it was gone again. Ethan moved out the next day. Years later, curiosity got the better of him. He looked up the building, searching for records, for anything that might explain what he had seen. There was no record of his apartment, no blueprint that matched the layout he had lived in. It was as if his home had never existed, just like the room.
Story number 2.
The woman in the reflection. When Mira moved into her new apartment, the last thing she expected was for someone to already be living there. It was a small place, just a one-bedroom unit in an old building downtown. The rent was cheap, the neighbors kept to themselves, and aside from the occasional creak in the floorboards, it was exactly what she needed. But then she saw the woman, not in the hallway, not in the elevator, in the mirror. It started subtly, a flicker in the corner of her eye as she brushed her teeth, a shadow that seemed too dark when she walked past the bathroom. At first, she dismissed it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe it was just her imagination. But then, one night, as she was getting ready for bed, she glanced at the mirror and froze, because for a split second, just before she turned away, the woman didn't move. Mira told herself it was a trick of the light, a delay in her brain processing her own reflection. But the feeling wouldn't leave. Every time she passed a reflective surface, a deep unease crawled under her skin. One evening, she decided to test it. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror and moved her hand slowly. The reflection followed. She blinked. The woman in the mirror didn't. Mira stumbled back, her heart hammering in her chest. The reflection returned to normal, but she couldn't shake what she had seen. That night, she covered every mirror in the apartment with sheets. It was ridiculous, she knew that, but at least it made her feel safer, until the knocking started. It came around 3 a.m., a soft, rhythmic tap, 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 tap. Mira sat up in bed, ears straining. It wasn't coming from the door, not from the walls. It was coming from the mirror. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone and turned on the flashlight. The bathroom mirror was still covered, but the sheet, it was moving. Someone was pressing against it from the other side. Mira grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and threw it at the mirror. The glass shattered, shards flying in all directions. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from within the broken shards, a whisper. "You set me free." The next morning, Mira packed a bag and left the apartment without looking back. She never returned, but the next tenant did, and within a week, they too covered the mirrors.